So unique vascular connection exists between the digestive tract and the liver. It is called as the hepatic portal system. So the middle layer is made up of smooth muscles and elastic fibers, and it is called as the tunica media. So heart failure means the state of the heart when it is not pumping blood effectively enough to meet the needs of the body. Hello everyone, a warm welcome to the last session of this chapter 18, that is body fluids and circulation. I am Dr. Divya, biology faculty, Vidhyaashram Pre-University College, Mysuru, Temple of Excellence. So in the previous session of this chapter, we had discussed about the cardiac cycle, and we also learnt about an interesting topic, that is the electrocardiograph, wherein we learnt how to read the heartbeat. In today's session, we shall discuss about double circulation, why the circulation process in the heart is called as double circulation, and we shall also study about the different disorders of the heart. So to begin with, let us start with learning about double circulation. So the circulation of blood in heart is called as double circulation because here two circulations are involved. One is the pulmonary circulation and the other one is the systemic circulation. So we shall study about that. So the blood flows strictly by a fixed route through the blood vessels, that is the arteries and the veins. We have seen that, right, in the previous session, like how the flow of the blood occurs, and it is not unlike a open circulatory system. Here we are talking about a closed circulatory system wherein the flow of blood is always channelized. That is, the flow of blood from the heart and to the heart should always take place through different arteries and veins that are present in the heart. So therefore, the flow of blood is strictly fixed in the case of double circulation. So here talking about the artery and the veins. So each artery and the vein, they are made up of three layers. So what are those three layers? It is made up of an inner layer, which is made up of squamous endothelium cells. It is called squamous endothelium. Why squamous endothelium means? They are made up of squamous cells, but they form the inner layer of the arteries and the veins. That is why they are called as the squamous endothelium cells, and it is called as the tunica intima. Next comes the middle layer. So the middle layer is made up of smooth muscles and elastic fibers, and it is called as the tunica media, and it is comparatively thin when compared in the veins. So the middle layer is made up of, if you can see here, middle layer. So the middle layer that is there, it is made up of smooth muscles. So these smooth muscles, that particular layer, it is called as the tunica media. Next is the external layer. So the external layer is quite fibrous, and it is made up of a fibrous connective tissue with collagen fibers, and it is called as the tunica externa. So the external layer that is there, it is made up of. So this is the external layer. So external layer of the veins and the arteries. So these are the veins and the arteries that they have depicted here. So these are covered by three layers. Innermost layer is called as the tunica intima. Middle layer is called as the tunica media, and the outermost layer is called as the tunica externa. So this is the outermost layer, which is the tunica externa. What kind of muscles it is made up of? So it is made up of tunica externa. So it is made up of fibrous connective tissue with collagen fibers, and it is called as tunica externa. So these are the different layers that covers the arteries and the veins, and it is through these arteries and the veins that the blood flows into and out of the heart. So moving further, we shall see how the pumping of the blood occurs, where exactly the blood travels and all that. So the blood pumped by the right ventricle, it enters the pulmonary artery. So the blood pumped by the right ventricle. So we have the right atrium. So this is the lungs. So I'll write it here if you get confused. So this is the lungs. So here pulmonary circulation will take place. Here systemic circulation will take place. Now here the lungs is connected to the heart. How is the lungs connected to the heart? It is connected to the heart by pulmonary vein and pulmonary artery. So the pulmonary vein carries the oxygenated blood. So I'll write here, it carries the oxygenated blood. And the pulmonary artery carries the deoxygenated blood. So wherever red color is depicted, that is the oxygenated blood traveling. Wherever the blue or purple color that is depicted, there the deoxygenated blood is traveling. Now talking about the heart. The heart is made up of 4 chambers: right atrium, the upper chamber, that is left atrium, the lower chamber, the right ventricle, and the left ventricle. Now talking about the flow of blood. So the blood pumped by the right ventricle enters the pulmonary artery. So the right ventricle that is there, it pumps the blood that enters into the pulmonary artery. Can you see here? Right ventricle pumps the blood that enters into the pulmonary artery. Now what type of blood it is? It is deoxygenated blood. It is the blood that is not having oxygen. So that is why it is given back to the lungs, so that that is carbon dioxide, it can be given out and then fresh air can be taken in. So that is how it is done. Whereas the left ventricle pumps blood into the aorta. So talking about the left ventricle. So if you can see here, the left ventricle pumps blood into the aorta. So the function of the left ventricle, it is to pump blood into the aorta. So now this blood is oxygenated blood. So that oxygenated blood will be carried to the body parts. So what did we understand? We understood that the right ventricle carries the deoxygenated blood through the pulmonary artery into the lungs, and the left ventricle carries the oxygenated blood into different parts of the body through the aorta. So that is what we understood. Now the deoxygenated blood is pumped into the pulmonary artery, that is pumped into the pulmonary artery, is passed on to the lungs, from where the oxygenated blood is carried by the pulmonary veins into the left atrium. Now you can see here. So the right ventricle carries the deoxygenated. From where did the deoxygenated blood comes? So here you have to understand, we breathe, right? When we breathe, what happens? We take in air. So that air enters into our lungs. In the lungs, it reaches the alveoli. From the alveoli, what is there in the air? Oxygen, right? So from the alveoli, the oxygen is taken by the blood. Now, that blood actually carries the oxygen through the pulmonary veins and it gives it to the heart, and from the heart, that is the left ventricle of the heart, it is given to the aorta, and then the aorta carries the oxygenated blood to different body parts. Now, the blood has deposited the oxygen in different body parts. Now, the blood has already deposited the oxygen. Now, is there any oxygen in the blood? No. The blood has to again fill back oxygen, right? So, that is called as the deoxygenated blood, because blood is already given to the body parts. Now, the blood doesn't have oxygen. That is called as deoxygenated blood. So, that deoxygenated blood actually moves into the right ventricle, then it enters into the pulmonary artery, and from the pulmonary artery it will be given to the lungs, and from the lungs it will be expelled out through our nose. Again what we will do? Again we will breathe, right? We will take in air, and the cycle continues like this. So therefore here, because the circulation occurs in both the lungs as well as the heart, it is called as a double circulation. So this pathway constitutes the pulmonary circulation. So whatever that is, the entering of the deoxygenated blood into the lungs, it constitutes the pulmonary circulation. After that, the systemic circulation will begin. So moving further, now the oxygenated blood entering the aorta is carried by a network of arteries. It is carried by a network of arteries, arterioles and capillaries to the tissues, that is to various body parts, where the deoxygenated blood is collected by a system of venules, veins and vena cava, and it is emptied into the right atrium. So for easy understanding, I told you already what happens here. Now the deoxygenated blood is there, that again the blood collects the oxygen from the lungs, it carries to the left atrium and the left ventricle, and from the left ventricle it travels through the aorta, and from the aorta it gets deposited in different body parts. So that process occurs here, and that is nothing but systemic circulation. Now understand the carrying of the deoxygenated blood from the body parts through the vena cava, that is this one, vena cava or the great veins, and also through the capillaries, the vena cava and all that, into the right atrium and the right ventricle of the heart, and from the right ventricle to the pulmonary artery, through the pulmonary artery into the lungs, that is the pulmonary circulation. Now talking about the systemic circulation, carrying the oxygenated blood from the lungs, that is from the lungs it will enter into the left atrium and the left ventricle. From the left ventricle it will enter into the that is aorta, and then from the aorta again it will enter into the different body parts where it will deposit the oxygen there. That is nothing but carrying of the oxygenated blood is nothing but the systemic circulation. So understand like this, carrying the deoxygenated blood is pulmonary circulation, carrying the oxygenated blood is the systemic circulation. Therefore, two types of circulation are involved here, right? So that is why it is called as double circulation. So this was about double circulation. Now we have understood why heart is called as the double circulation. So moving further, the systemic circulation provides nutrients, oxygen and also other essential substances to the tissues. So when systemic circulation is occurring, what happens? The oxygenated blood is carried from the heart to the different body parts, right? So during that process, not just oxygen is being carried, but during that time, several other substances which are important, such as nutrients, all that, minerals, all that are also carried and deposited in the body tissue. And once it gets deposited in the body tissue, now in the body tissue, what is the carbon dioxide? That carbon dioxide and other harmful substances are carried by pulmonary circulation and it is eliminated out of the body. So this is how it occurs. So a unique vascular connection exists between the digestive tract, the liver, which is called as the hepatic portal system. So we need to study one more system here, because the waste products can also be eliminated in the form of excreta, right? So here we need to know about a vascular connection. So this is also a kind of elimination process that is occurring here. So a unique vascular connection exists between the digestive tract and the liver. It is called as the hepatic portal system. So what happens in the hepatic portal system? So the hepatic portal vein, it carries blood from the intestine to the liver before it is delivered to the systemic circulation. So here other waste particles that should not mix with the oxygenated blood, that should not undergo systemic circulation. So that is the time when after it reaches the heart, it enters the blood actually, or the blood carrying the carbon dioxide and all that which is collected from the body parts, right? Various unwanted substances, carbon dioxide, everything that is collected, that will be carried by the hepatic portal vein. It will carry the blood from the intestine to the liver before it is delivered to the systemic circulation. So from the heart, it enters into the body part, from the body tissues, it enters. So all these are body tissues itself, but I'm talking about the hepatic portal system here. From there, it enters into the intestine, from the intestine to the liver, and then it enters into the systemic circulation. So there is a special coronary system of blood vessels present in the body, which has a very important function in the circulation of blood to and from the cardiac musculature. So what is cardiac musculature? We have studied in the previous session. So this is how the double circulation process occurs. So for you to understand, you need to know that because two types of circulation are occurring here. One is pulmonary circulation and the other one is systemic circulation. It is called as double circulation. But before the blood is given to the systemic circulation, there is a hepatic portal system that plays a very important role there. So this was about double circulation. So moving further, we shall study about the regulation of cardiac activity. How the cardiac activity is regulated, that is the delivering of the oxygenated blood and collection of the deoxygenated blood. It occurs in a systemic manner. How does exactly that occurs? What are responsible for that systemic cardiac cycle to occur? So normal activities of the hearts are regulated intrinsically, that is, they are auto-regulated by specialized muscles. So they are the nodal tissues. What were the nodal tissues? We have studied in the previous session. So hence the heart is called as myogenic. Heart is myogenic in nature. It is the cardiac muscles of the heart that actually regulates the movement of the blood or the contraction and relaxation of the heart and all that. So for all these processes, for regular heartbeat, for that lub-dub sound, for the regular lub-dub sound, if it has to be produced, or if the regular contraction and relaxation of the heart muscles has to occur, then a special neural center is present in the medulla oblongata of a brain. So in a brain, there is a special neural center which is called as the medulla oblongata. And these medulla oblongata, those nerves which are connected from the medulla oblongata to the heart, they are the ones that actually moderate the cardiac function through a autonomic nervous system. So this is called as autonomic because it is not under our control. It is a automatic process that keeps occurring wherein there is a connectivity of nerve fibers between the medulla oblongata of the brain and the heart, which actually sends messages regarding the normal functioning or the normal cardiac cycle that occurs in a heart. So neural signals through the sympathetic nerves, which are parts of the autonomic nervous system, can increase the rate of heartbeat and the strength of the ventricular contraction, and therefore it can also increase the cardiac output. So that is when I told you cardiac output is not same in everyone, right? For example, in an athlete, the cardiac output is more. Here also what happens at that time is when an athlete is doing some activity, at that time the medulla oblongata will send informations to the heart saying that the person requires more amount of oxygen. Please function well, let the cardiac output be more during that time. So that is how they are interconnected to one another. On the other hand, the parasympathetic neural signals, which is also one more component of the autonomic nervous system, it decreases the rate of the heartbeat. So this and the speed of conduction of action potential and thereby the cardiac output. So speed of conduction of action potential means action potential gets conducted in the ventricular node and the sinoatrial node, right? So that increase in the action potential, how much the action potential has to be increased, how much, at what rate it should function, all that will be decided by the parasympathetic nerve. So the parasympathetic nerve actually decreases the rate of heartbeat and the sympathetic nerve actually increases the rate of heartbeat. So both these sympathetic nerves and the parasympathetic nerves both are part of the autonomic nervous system. So this is how the regulation of cardiac activity occurs. So and there is some more hormones that are produced which is called as the adrenal medullary hormones. They can also increase the cardiac output. So that is true. The adrenal hormone that is released, that also increases a heartbeat. Sometimes when we are scared of something, all of a sudden a heartbeat starts to increase, right? Because at that time when we are in a shock, we need more amount of oxygen. More amount of oxygen needs to be supplied to the body tissue. That is how the adrenal medullary hormone can also increase the heartbeat. So this is how the parasympathetic nerves plays an important role in decreasing the heart rate, and the sympathetic nerves plays an important role in increasing the heart rate. And not just that, the adrenal medullary hormone can also play an important role in increasing the heart rate. So this was about the regulation of cardiac activity. And all these are connected from the medulla oblongata of the brain to the heart and then vice versa. So that is how it occurs. So moving further, we shall study about the diseases of the circulatory system or the disorders of the circulatory system. So one such disease is the common one, that is high blood pressure, which is called as hypertension. So hypertension is the term for blood pressure that is higher than normal. So a normal person will have a blood pressure of 120/80 Hg, but in this particular case what happens, in a hypertension person, his blood pressure will be more than 120/80 mmHg. So in this measurement, 120 mmHg, that is millimeters of mercury pressure, is the systolic. So what is systolic? Contraction of the heart, or pumping pressure, and 80 mmHg is the diastolic. So how much is the pressure created by the contraction of the heart, that is systolic process of the heart? It is 120 mmHg. And when the heart is in the relaxation state, it is 80 mmHg. So systolic is 120 mmHg, diastolic is 80 mmHg. So this is normal. So when the heart is contracting, it is 120 mmHg. When it is relaxing, it is 80 mmHg. So this is in a normal person. But in a hypertension person, the contraction and relaxation of the heart will be more. It will be more than 120 and 80 respectively. So that is called as hypertension. And if repeated checks of blood pressure of an individual is done, it will be 140/90. That is 140 over 90, or it will be higher. So if a person has somewhere 140/90, it means that the contraction, the pressure created by the contraction of the heart is 140 mmHg, and the pressure created by the relaxation of the heart is 90 mmHg, which is not good, which means that the person is having high BP. That is, it shows high hypertension. So high blood pressure leads to various heart diseases, because the pumping of the blood mainly depends on the pressure that is exerted in the chambers of the heart, right? So that is why high blood pressure leads to a lot of heart diseases, and also it affects other important organs such as the brain and the kidney as well. Why? Because enough oxygen will not get supplied properly. So that is the reason. So next, talking about one more disorder, that is coronary artery disease. So hypertension actually leads to a disorder of the heart. But here we are talking directly of a disease to the heart, which is the coronary artery disease. So coronary artery disease is referred to as atherosclerosis, and here this disease actually affects the vessels, so that supplies the blood to the heart muscle. So we know that the flow of blood is systemic through various vessels and veins and all that, right? So here, when any problem occurs in the vessels, which is called as atherosclerosis, it affects the supply of the blood through the vessels to the heart muscles, and it is caused by the deposition of calcium, fat, cholesterol and various fibrous tissue in the vessels, which makes the lumen of the arteries narrow, because arteries also are important in carrying the oxygenated blood. So they will become narrower. When they become narrower, how much amount of flow of blood should occur will not occur. So if the blood flow doesn't occur properly out of the ventricle, it will again cause a variation in the pressure of the heart, and the functioning of the heart will get altered, right? So that is what actually occurs here. Next, talking about one more disorder, which is called as angina. So angina, it is also called as angina pectoris, and it is a symptom of acute chest pain which appears when enough amount of oxygen is not supplied to the heart muscles. Whenever we have a chest pain, the doctor says, please check your heart. It might be something related to the heart disorder. So when enough oxygen is not reaching the heart muscles, we get a sort of chest pain. That is called as angina pectoris. So angina can occur both in men as well as in women of any age, but it is more common among the middle-aged people and the elderly. and it occurs due to conditions that affect the blood flow, because blood doesn't flow properly to the heart muscles. Therefore, means if the blood is not flowing properly, proper oxygen will not be carried, therefore it causes chest pain. So this is about angina. So moving further, next disorder, it is the heart failure. So heart failure means the state of the heart when it is not pumping blood effectively enough to meet the needs of the body. So I told you 70 ml of blood should be pumped, right? Or totally once the cardiac cycle is complete, 5000 ml of blood should be pumped. If so much amount of blood is not pumped properly, then it means that the person is having a heart failure. So it is sometimes called as congestive heart failure, because congestion of the lungs is also one of the main symptoms of the disease. And heart failure is different from that of cardiac arrest. There is a difference between heart failure and cardiac arrest. Heart failure person can survive for few hours or whatever until he gets medical help. But a person with cardiac arrest is his heart completely stops within a second and it cannot be brought back to life. In the case of heart failure, the heart will not stop beating, but the number of beats will vary. But in the case of cardiac arrest, the heart completely stops beating. So that is the difference between the two. Or also there is a difference between heart attack. So when the heart muscles is suddenly damaged by inadequate blood supply, it is called as heart attack. So there is a difference between heart failure, cardiac arrest and heart attack. Heart attack person can also be cured if timely medical attention is given. So this is about the heart failure. So I hope you understood the session well, wherein we studied about the double circulation process, wherein we learned how systemic circulation and pulmonary circulation occurs, and also we learned how the cardiac cycle is being regulated by the connectivity between the medulla oblongata of the brain and the heart, and also we understood about the different disorders of the heart. So I hope you understood the session well, and also you understood the whole lesson well. With this particular chapter comes to an end, and we shall meet again in the next coming sessions with a new chapter. Thank you.